This is Bishop Edward Weisenburger here in the Diocese of Tucson, and I'm visiting once again with Joanna Williams, the Executive Director of the Kino Border Initiative. It's a very critical ministry that our diocese shares with the diocese that neighbors us in Mexico, the Diocese of Nogales, Sonora, and the Jesuit Order. The three of us together are serving migrants. Actually, we're serving Christ, who we find in migrants. But I wanted to talk to Joanna one more time in this season of the year as we head into Advent. But first, give us just a little synopsis on the history and the purpose of the Kino Border Initiative, the KBI.
Thank you for welcoming me here. I might start my synopsis from the last part of your question, which is our work at KBI is to welcome Christ in this moment in the form of the migrant. But really, it's started in 2008, 2009 as this collaborative work. Really trying to live out Matthew 25, where Jesus shares with us that when we welcome the stranger, we're welcoming him. So we do that through humanitarian work, and we also do that through raising awareness and helping people better understand the experiences of migrants at the border.
So why exactly are families and individuals coming to the border? What's your primary experience there?
So I think the first thing to emphasize is that families actually really love the places that they came from.
Yeah.
As I think about
I have been told so many times people would rather stay home if they could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a mom from Mexico that talks about going to the rodeo with her kids in her hometown, or another family was sharing with me the swimming holes in their community. And what's been striking to us is how hard people have tried to stay. I think about a dad from Guanajuato, which is central Mexico, that I met a little bit ago, he lived in a rural town, and he planted orchards. That was a work that he did. He cared for orchards. Over many, many years, the cartel had controlled his town. So he'd been exposed to organized crime for this long period. And yet 6 years ago, he still decided to plant some peach trees, which they take 7 years to bear fruit. He said, no, I still believe that life was possible there. But then at that 6-year mark was when another cartel, another group of organized crime moved in, and they were much more violent, and they actually tried to kidnap him. And so he had to flee, leaving literally the fruit of his labor to rot on the ground. But he said, it was all that I could do to keep myself safe, but most of all to keep my family safe.
Wow, wow. Now, as I said a moment ago, or maybe I didn't say it, but we're heading into the season of Advent. And Advent are those 4 quick weeks in the Church's calendar liturgically, leading up, of course, to Christmas, but a time of anticipation and hope. Is there anything about Advent that resonates with you in your ministry on the border?
There's so much about Advent that resonates with us. I think particularly that image of Mary and Joseph who are looking for room at the inn. In Mexico, we talk about that in terms of the posadas. So we do these processions where we accompany Mary and Joseph. And I feel a little bit like I'm seeing Mary every single day of our work, looking for room at the inn. You know, I think just last week we received a woman who was 8 months pregnant. She'd just been expelled from the desert, was 8 months pregnant. She unfortunately ended up having a miscarriage and losing her baby. And it just took that moment in the midst of the grief to think, this is Mary here today. She's just looking for a place to safely have her child, to safely form a family. And so we so deeply identify with that Advent spirit, and also that Advent spirit of anticipation, of believing that there's something coming, that the Savior of the world is coming. Sometimes we can't quite find hope, but we can hope that we will find hope. Yes.
Yeah, that aspect of hope seems so critical to all of human life. Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful. You know, there are people in the interior of our country and right here on the border as well who feel, I think, overwhelmed by the immigration situation, especially as it's presented in the media and in the political world. But what are you kind of experiencing on a daily basis, someone who's actually there dealing with immigrants day in, day out?
I can definitely understand the people who watch the news and just feel paralyzed or feel confused. I think no matter what news channel you're watching, you might watch a news channel that portrays immigrants as heroes, you might watch another channel that portrays them as villains, and neither of those really ring true for us. My experience at the border is that we're not working with heroes or villains. What we're working with are people, ordinary people who are in extraordinary circumstances.
Wow.
We have moms and dads that are just trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward for my kids. So it's really oftentimes not about them, it's really their care for their kids. And they find, like the peach farmer, or the peach orchard tender, I don't actually know the right word for that, but that there's not a way for them to go back. They can't go back to their homes. But there's also not really a way for them to go forward because access to legal channels for immigration have become so dramatically restricted in the last many years. And so each individual family is trying to make those decisions. And another thing that I think it doesn't make it to the news so much, you watch the news and think, oh, you kind of throw up your hands. You say, well, what am I supposed to do about that? But when you are living and working at the border every day, we see these small acts of love that become miraculous.
Oh, wow.
And it's in living in that relationship and responding in generosity to one person and to then another family and seeing how doors open, volunteers come, resources appear sometimes out of thin air, and that's what really gives me a sense of there is something we can do. Maybe I don't have the right answer. There's not a single answer at the border, but I think in that faithful work of daily love, we can live our way into an answer, and we can live our way into the miracle of God's generosity.
Our employees here my co-workers here at the Chancery had a project for Casa Alitas, which is another ministry of our diocese, and that's for people who are brought to us actually by customs and immigration officials, people who have legally gone through whatever with papers, and they need a place very temporarily on their journey to where they're headed. And we had a project here. We spent an hour or so stuffing bags with small, inexpensive little children's toys and little books and things. And I actually saw a child receive that, and you would have thought it was like a teenager getting a new Mercedes-Benz car. Or that's not what a teenager wants, but anyway, a Ferrari, whatever. But it was like not just the eyes, the whole person lit up to be given something so simple. And it just speaks to me of the level of perhaps want they have experienced and the hope that compels them forward. So if this is a season of liturgical hope and expectation, where do you draw hope, Joanna?
Well, first of all, I think that I can't just set my mind to hope. I think that in some ways God gives us the hope as a grace that we need for the work that He's called us to. And then I can experience and cultivate that as I encounter families that are so deeply hopeful against all odds. These are families that believe in the goodness of America more than I can even do.
Wow.
I think about a 6-year-old who never had any formal education, because his elementary school was shut down. He never had kindergarten, any of that. And he was so excited to be in our kids' activity space and feel like he was reading, even though he wasn't actually reading. He really felt this sense of purpose of I can be something, I can learn. And so that drives me forward. And I also draw a lot of hope from the generosity of individuals who respond to the need at the border, and seeing the chain effect that creates. Think about a woman, a migrant, who shared with me as she was leaving KBI, she said, I never expected there to be a place like this. I never expected to be treated with such love and such dignity. But now that I've experienced this, I can see that God's inviting me to create those spaces wherever I go in the world. Whatever happens with my migration journey, wow. I'm going to create spaces of hospitality. And so we see this multiplying effect, and we really see the promise of the kingdom. I think we have the privilege of that.
The first 4 centuries of the church grew 40% exponentially every 10 years. And it was because people experienced a profound charity, a profound agape love on the part of Christians. And I sometimes wonder if maybe one of the ways we kickstart our church, which has so much to say to the world today, maybe it's through these extraordinary acts of loving kindness and charity that the gospel is going to take root again. Now I have one last question for you for today, and it is simply, I believe you've spent some Christmases in the past at the Kino Border Initiative with your husband and your daughter, with your family a little bit. Tell me a little bit about Christmas at the KBI.
Well, we're one of our organizational values is hope and joy. So we really do up the celebrations when we have the chance. So I spent actually this last Christmas, at the time my daughter was 1, my husband and I spent the day down there giving out just little tiny toys, stuffed animals to the kids. But there was such extraordinary joy as
Yes.
we broke the piñata. And it was this reminder of, again, of our common humanity. If we're maybe the Christmas here looks a little different. There's maybe some nostalgia for what people would have wanted in their homes. But we're joining in the celebration with the universal church. And so there's this real sense of belonging and this sense of promise and just a silliness of it. And I think that we have to lean into those ordinary moments.
The silliness is important because to lose yourself in the moment, that's a moment of grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Joanna, this is so helpful. You help us understand so much better, I think, migration, immigration issues, our common humanity and how it comes down to we are brothers and sisters of one loving God. So thank you so much. Do you promise, and I have witnesses here, do you promise you'll come back and speak to us again about what's going on at KBI?
I would be more than happy.
Because I always love to hear it. I love to visit there and I love to hear about it.
As long as you promise to visit again.
I do. I promise. God bless. Thank you so much.
Thanks.